What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Rotoworld Basketball Show presented by NBC Sports. I'm Dan Titus, Yahoo Fantasy Basketball Analyst, joined with Rotoworld Basketball analysts and experts Noah Rubin and Raphielle Johnson. We got a lot of things to talk about today. We're going to get through the fantasy pickups of the week as well as the schedule things you need to know. But let's start off with some positive news because some good things did happen in basketball over the last week. Paolo Banchero dropped a 50-point near triple-double, fell 1 assist shy. Right now, he is currently top 60 in category leagues, top 10 in points leagues. So I want to go to Raph. What's your fantasy outlook for Paolo Banchero the rest of this season? Because Paolo generally has been in category leagues like a top 160 type guy. Is that something that he can sustain in this top 60 territory?
I believe he can. Thus far, he's looked a lot more efficient in terms of getting his shots and also creating for others. He's kept the turnovers in check. I think the percentages and turnovers have been the issues in category leagues in the past. And the team's gotten better, too. I think that'll help as well in terms of the quality of his looks that he gets offensively. So I think he can maintain the category league value that we've seen. Top 10 in points leagues, I'm not so sure, but I don't think he's going to fall off too much given what we've seen and how much he continues to progress in his game.
Yeah, Noah, where do you stand on him from a points perspective or even categories?
I think it's an interesting case because if you're just looking at his overall numbers, it's clear that he's improved his points, his rebounds. The field goal percentage was kind of the main thing, but he's this athletic 6'10" guy that can create his own shot. Like, sure, the field goal percentage was eventually going to go up, but if we look at the 4 games that he's played, a lot of that is kind of, I guess, bumped up by this massive 50, 13, and 9 game that he just had. But overall with the numbers, the free throw percentage is even worse than it had been in the past, and it already wasn't great. So you could look at that and say, if he gets back to being a 73% free throw shooter, he can be even better. But at the same time, do we think he's going to maintain his level of production to what it has been at this point? Or is it going to kind of be this spotty, okay, sometimes he goes off for 30 plus, sometimes he has a couple poor shooting nights and scores 15. So kind of a mixed bag, but overall, especially with the last game, very impressed. And I think he can maintain this level of production. It just might be inconsistent.
Yeah, I think where I stand with it, I think this is going to be the ebbs and flows of Paolo Banchero. Like, he's had 2 really good games where he's dropped, over 30. And then he's had these 2, minuscule 15-point games where he didn't shoot particularly well, had some turnover issues. So I think that's just what's going to be the norm for Paolo. So I think he should settle in probably around a top 60, 70 guy this year. This will be his best fantasy season. But I definitely am more encouraged by using him in points leagues. I think he could probably maintain top 15. Yeah, top 15 status. I don't know about top 10, but top 15 is certainly feasible if he continues to average, upwards of 27, 28 points per game, and his rebounds stay around that 8 and assist to around 5. So very encouraging what we're seeing from Paolo, but also have to take into account that Franz Wagner left that game early with an illness, and Jalen Suggs looked really good too, man. I think he's a guy that people were a little bit down on to start the season, but he's finally starting to catch on a little bit. But let's get to the doom and gloom aspect of this program here. We just got to notice that Scottie Barnes is going to be missing upwards of 3 weeks with an orbital bone fracture in his eye. So really tough injury for the Raptors. Is this Grady Dick season, Noah?
I don't know if he's the main guy that I would say kind of benefits from the injury. I think that his usage was going to go down with as soon as RJ Barrett got back, but he's still seeing a handful of shots. I'd say that somebody I'd be more interested in, and maybe it is Grady. Okay, Grady Dick might be better overall, but I think the guy that's going to be the main beneficiary of Scottie Barnes' injury is going to be Ochai Agbaji and Jonathan Mogbo, who's a rookie. Neither guy was phenomenal against Denver, but I think Scottie Barnes got hurt pretty late in that game, so one of those guys is going to really step into a larger role and is probably a little bit easier to find on the waiver wire than Grady Dick. I don't know his exact roster percentage, but there will be, shots and usage to go around, whether it be Grady Dick, RJ Barrett, maybe Emmanuel Quickly when he returns, even Davion Mitchell at this point. So it's a lot of shots to go around in Toronto.
That's deep if we're going to Davion territory. What are your thoughts on the Raph?
Yeah, I think Grady Dick will be fine. Now, the issue with him is that you lose a key creator in Scottie Barnes. Mm-hmm. So how is he going to get the shots? That's the question that you kind of have to ask yourself. But 24% roster right now, it should be pretty easy to find on waiver wires. I think Ochai Agbaji's at 19%. You may get a little bit more defensive value from him or Jonathan Mogbo, but in terms of the offense, I think Grady's going to be the one who kind of steps up and takes on a little bit more responsibility. The question is, how's it going to impact the efficiency if they're asking him to do a little bit more off the bounce? Just because I don't know if that's going to be something you really want him to be doing too much of.
Yeah, don't put the ball on the floor as much, Grady Dick. Maintain that catch and shoot because that's what you're great at. Yeah, another player, this team is just in a really weird spot right now. Let's talk about the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, Stephen Curry is going to be reevaluated at the end of the week. He sprained his ankle. It was an ankle that's given him some issues in the past. Fortunately, he wears ankle braces, so it may not be a long-term thing. But Andrew Wiggins missed the front end of a back-to-back set. He looks like he's questionable tonight. We'll see if he gives it a go. But D'Anthony Melton's also out. So who is actually playing for the Warriors? And to add to that, Steve Kerr wants to play lineup gymnastics again and move Jonathan Kuminga to the bench. So first off, Raph, let's talk about Jonathan Kuminga moving to the bench. Is this something fantasy managers should be concerned about?
When it was announced that he was going to come off the bench, I thought it was kind of like panic time. He didn't start off the season well. And then moving into this role in a contract year, no less, you kind of wonder, all right, what's his mindset going to be coming off the bench? Goes out and has his best game of the season in their comeback win over the Pelicans. So I think if you have Kuminga, you definitely hold him. Just for the remainder of the week, see what happens here. If he plays extremely well in this role, maybe you consider selling high ahead of week 3. So I think I would take the wait and see approach with Kuminga personally.
And how do you feel about it, Noah, in terms of like just all the injuries that the Warriors are going through? Is this an opportunity for you to just maximize having Jonathan Kuminga on your roster? Is it someone you want to maybe potentially buy, or are you on the sell side of like, oh, this is going to be the best case scenario because everyone's hurt and he's going to get a ton of usage and opportunity?
I think if you can buy low, then I'd be happy to do that. Just looking at Kuminga, we saw a similar situation with him last year. Obviously, it was very dramatic at the beginning of the year where there was the reports that he didn't believe that Steve Kerr could help him grow as a player anymore. So then Steve Kerr threw him in the starting lineup, and then he got benched. And then he had this 8-game streak of 20-point games. So we've seen him respond well in the past. I think he responded well last night. So I am kind of excited to see what he continues to do if he continues to stay in a bench role. But yeah, there's gonna be a lot of shots to go around, whether Andrew Wiggins is back tonight or not. So yeah, no, a buy low situation, I think yes. I don't think I would. And again, I don't know exactly what that looks like value-wise, but if I'm able to get somebody that I don't really plan to hold and get Kuminga, a very talented player who was kind of limited at times the first few games, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, it was interesting to read that, I'll mention him in a second, but yeah, I was interested to read about Jonathan Kuminga potentially being a trade target. The Sixers were on that list. And once he was on back to bench mode, I was like, is this a weird, I wonder how Kuminga's feeling in this, in the psyche of an NBA player. It's like, hey man, I finally earned my starting spot. Now you're putting me on the bench again. So I don't know, maybe it's something to monitor. Maybe, the fact that he didn't get that extension, he could be someone that could be, potentially being put on display for a trade. How do you guys feel about Buddy Hield? Because he's unconscious right now and probably one of the better waiver wire pickups of the year thus far. Is this something that he can withstand? Despite coming off the bench, this dude is just like a micro. I mean, the 3-point shooting, outstanding right now. So where are you guys with? I'll start with Noah. Where are you with Buddy Hield and how you're trying to play him for the rest of the season, or someone you're trying to sell high on?
Yeah, I think we've seen Buddy in the past have some very hot stretches and some very cold stretches. I think that if there was a singular team that I was confident that he'd be able to really extend that stretch of hot shooting over the course of a full season, it would be in Golden State, even though he is coming off the bench. Or I guess when everybody's healthy coming off the bench. They like to shoot threes, and they've been very good over the past decade at getting Steph and Clay to run around and get open looks. And Buddy Hield's now getting a chance to do that, and he's taking advantage of it. 3 of the 4 games that he's played in has been, I think it's over 20 points. So
yep, averaging 21.
Yeah, I'm very happy with continuing to roster him and rely on him for points and threes. And I don't really see a reason why it would stop, aside from just okay, he just starts missing shots, which is nothing we can really predict.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting the way that he's kind of settled into that, you could say secondary scorer. I mean, I think a lot of people thought Brandon Podziemski was going to step up, but he's kind of just jumped him in the line. Where are you with him, Raph? Are you going to hold him, or is it someone that you're looking to sell?
I think I'd hold Buddy. As Noah mentioned, this is something that with their system and his skill set, I wouldn't say it's easy to maintain throughout the course of the season, but he's set up pretty well to do so. So I would hold him if you have him rostered. I think it may be too late to get him if you're trying to acquire. You're probably gonna have to pay a decent price tag for him just because of the injuries that they're dealing with right now. So I think Buddy Hield, I like where he's positioned, whether he starts or comes off the bench. Sure.
Yeah, one of the value picks of the year thus far. Let's go to the Grizzlies for a second because, I think one of the more unheralded waiver wire pickups has been Scottie Pippen Jr., just thriving as a backup point guard right now. And Ja Morant still dealing with a thigh injury. He's questionable on Wednesday. Is there a chance that Scottie Pippen Jr. can withstand just week 2? Can he go beyond this as a long-term value, Raph?
In deep leagues, possibly. I don't think so in standard leagues though. Like he's looked really good in his role, but I don't know. I think eventually opposing teams are going to actually take him seriously. Not that I expect him to fall off of a cliff once that happens, but I don't know if I can't see him consistently putting up 8 to 10 assists per game in that role. Just I don't know. If you got him, I think you're kind of in between riding it out, see how far you can take this because of the Morant injury, and potentially looking to sell to see what you can get in the short term. Because as good as he's looked and as fun as it's been to watch him, I don't know if this is sustainable for Scottie Pippen Jr.
Yeah, and sticking to the Grizzlies for a second, I mean, we haven't really seen much out of Zach Edey. We'll touch on some rookies later. The rookies have just been abysmal thus far. Now that Jaren Jackson Jr. is back, Noah, do you see Santi Aldama having some sustainability here? He's been shooting lights out, playing very well, but obviously, now Jaren Jackson Jr. is back, that should impact his minutes a little bit.
Yeah, and it should. I think what was interesting to me was the fact that in their last game against Chicago, with Ja Morant out and Jaren Jackson back, Aldama still started. It wasn't Scottie Pippen Jr. So that was interesting. He also played 35 minutes, was the most on the team. So yeah, no, I think he's definitely a guy to hold on to for now. Whether it's Ja or somebody else sitting, it seems like he's going to see a lot of minutes regardless. And he's been very productive, like you said, even though he had a kind of shooting night, he had 11, 13, and 7 in their last game. So no, I mean, I think if they're fully healthy and they change to having their starters play all 33 plus minutes or whatever, then sure, you'd probably drop him at that point. But right now the rotations have been very interesting in Memphis, and he's playing well, and I don't see why they wouldn't just continue to ride the hot hand.
Yeah, I mean, how concerned are you guys on the Ja Morant injury? It seems like it's a day-to-day thing. I don't think the fantasy managers should be panicking yet or anything like that. But I think it just goes to show how much the Memphis Grizzlies, now seemingly healthy and then now building out this depth. I mean, converting Scottie Pippen Jr. from a two-way deal to a full contract now and how he's playing. I think it goes to show how dangerous this Memphis team can actually be. A team that's not going to be dangerous, but is playing very well, the Brooklyn Nets. Cam Thomas is putting this team on his back. I mean, he's been a top 12 player, first-round value thus far in the season. It's only been 4 games, so settle down, y'all. But Nic Claxton continues to come off the bench. At what point do you think, Raph, will see Nic Claxton re-enter the starting lineup? But he's been really solid off the bench, getting a double-double in his last outing. But yeah, just curious to see when do you expect that minutes to really ramp up to starters minutes?
It'll eventually happen. He's coming off that hamstring injury, so they're taking their time with him. The unfortunate thing with the schedule is that they've got a back-to-back Sunday and Monday, as well as the second game of back-to-back tonight. So I kind of feel like after that Sunday, Monday, where you get Detroit and Memphis at home, that may be where we start to see those minutes kind of creep up to where he's in a starter's position as he usually is. So I would kind of pinpoint week 3 sometime is where those minutes will probably increase to the point where he's going to be getting 30 plus per night.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I don't know where you stand on this, Noah, so I'm curious, but Ben Simmons missed last game with rest. I I don't know if you have him rostered. I definitely don't have him in any spots. But how do you think that he kind of projects into this thing? And I don't know. I feel like at this point, Noah Clowney is getting minutes. Is that sustainable? I mean, I think he's definitely getting trusted into more opportunities here. But I think the biggest surprise from the Brooklyn scene that I've seen is probably Dennis Schroeder. Want to know what you're thinking about him and kind of how he plays in it, because obviously when Ben Simmons doesn't play, Schroeder's on ball more. He had 20 points last night, put up a lot of good counting stats. So just want to know what the staying power is for Dennis Schroeder, a guy that was like a late round pick this year.
Yeah, I think, well, as far as the Ben Simmons, Noah Clowney thing, I think both those guys are interesting and intriguing, but kind of disappointing to this point. Not that anybody expected anything different from Simmons, but I was expecting Noah Clowney to maybe play a little better in their last game because he got the start, only ended up playing 16 minutes. I think dealt with a little bit of foul trouble, partially because Claxton was playing well. They just, stuck with him. But Schroeder, yeah, he's been awesome. So 4 games, 22.5 points, 8.3 assists, 3.8 threes, which is very surprising. Not a number that you typically see out of him. I don't see why he wouldn't continue to play well. And he's been awesome in all 4 games, or I guess at least the last 3 of the 4 games that he's played. If I'm not mistaken, it's a contract year for him, so I don't know exactly how much that factors in. But he probably also knows that, hey, when it gets to like February, this team's probably going to pull the plug on my season. So if I want to earn a contract this summer, I kind of got to make my move right now. So I don't know, maybe that's just some narrative that we can play into a little bit that doesn't actually mean anything, but the results have been great. So I don't see why it wouldn't continue.
Yeah, I think he's a hold, man. I think that the way that I know Jordi Fernandez is looking for some consistency and a high floor. And I think you've seen when Ben Simmons touches the ball as his point center, he turns it over at a ridiculous amount still. He's still not willing to shoot. There was this 3-on-1 break where he just passed it up again. So I think that if you're going to talk about a sustaining floor and competing and trying to build a culture, I think you do that with Schroeder and Cam Thomas as your top dogs. And we finally got a Cam Johnson sighting. He had 20 points last night on Tuesday night. So it was good to see him finally get his groove. Unfortunately for the Jazz, man, they are going through it. Are they winless right now? I believe they are.
I think so.
Yeah, I think they're winless. And then their best player, Lauri Markkanen, left with the second half with a back injury. On top of the unfortunate news of Taylor Hendricks suffering a season-ending injury, just absolutely gruesome. Feel for him and prayers up for him. But what are we doing with the Jazz here, man? Keontae George is still generating a lot of assists, but the field goal percentage is sitting in that Scoot Henderson territory of just terrible. Jordan Clarkson entered the starting lineup. Noah, is this something that you see staying? Colin Sexton going to the bench here, or is this just Will Hardy just trying to find something that works?
I think it is something that could stay. I think it is something that we'll probably have to see a few more games. Maybe it was a one-time thing. Maybe it's a few game thing. I don't think I saw any quotes saying whether that was a permanent change or not. But if it is, then what Sexton did last night was kind of scary with how bad it was. Like 0 for 7 from the field, 3 turnovers, 4 points. Like obviously not a guy that would impact fantasy at all. And he only played 18 minutes. But Clarkson, on the other hand, we know he gives out buckets and occasionally does some other things in there as well. So if that is a permanent change, then Clarkson stock up, Sexton stock down.
Yeah, where do you feel about that, Raph?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Sexton was abysmal last night. The whole team really struggled. I think you give them a little grace just because of the Taylor Hendricks injury the night before. And I'm sure playing the second game of a back-to-back under those circumstances isn't ideal, but the lack of efficiency from that backcourt that we saw before the lineup change, I think that certainly boosts Clarkson. Sexton in a reserve role. I know he played well at times in previous seasons as a reserve, but he's a bit too erratic for me. I think if anything, I'm looking at guys like Cody Williams, Isaiah Collier once he gets back healthy for the long-term play, because short-term, there really isn't too much in this roster that I like from a fantasy standpoint. Maybe Walker Kessler, but that's probably about it, especially with Markkanen out.
Yeah, I think Danny Ainge is probably sending word down. It's like, we got Jordan Clarkson here. John Collins is still around. Like, let's get these veterans some time so that maybe we can sell these guys and really give a better look at the younger developing talent. I think Cody Williams definitely is a guy that I'm I'm watching. Definitely had a lot of good remarks and grades throughout the preseason and how he's gotten better. So I think him and Bryce Sensabaugh are a couple of guys that I'm looking at like, okay, maybe these guys could be a thing as time progresses. But I think it's a little bit too soon. If you're targeting any of these guards in Utah, man, just the efficiency is not going to be there on a consistent basis. So it's really hard to get there. But one place where we can go is Del Mar. That's right, for the Breeders' Cup, the world's fastest thoroughbred to come together this weekend in Del Mar to compete for the title of world champion at the Breeders' Cup. Catch the action from Southern California on Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. Let's go to the Hawks and the Wizards, because I think there's a lot of injury considerations from a fantasy perspective that we need to talk through. On the Wizards side, Kyle Kuzma sustained a groin injury. He's going to be missing appears to be multiple games. So Bilal Coulibaly season, Noah, is that where we're at now?
Yeah, he's probably the main guy that I'm interested in. He was, in my opinion, a good late round swing entering the year, and he's been really, really good so far. I don't know his exact fantasy numbers off the top of my head, but like just watching him play on both ends, he's been much improved and looks very good. And I think that the increased offensive role, like we'll see some even better results, which is exciting. A couple of other guys that, you know, you can also take a look at. There's some of the other rookies and Corey Kispert as well, but we know what Kispert is. He's a 3-point shooter, and Bub Carrington and Keyshawn George are probably just, you know, going to have to deal with some inefficiencies as well. Not the most effective guys. So at this point, yeah, Coulibaly is the main guy to be looking at. Maybe a little boost for Alex Sarr as well.
Yep, Coulibaly is right now is creeping in that top 100 status, averaging 16 points, 5 boards. We know what he can do defensively. He's, you know, extremely long wing, very talented young player. So if he's getting 30 minutes, man, I feel like he should be rostered in more than 29% of the Yahoo leagues. Pretty crazy that Bub Carrington is the leading scorer for the rookie class right now at 8 points per game. This goes to show how bad this class is right now, or just the lack of opportunities, I should say, for this class. But Raph, where are you with the Wizards and the injuries?
Yeah, I think Coulibaly for sure. You know, he's shown off an improved ability to create for others, which is pretty important when your starting point guard is Jordan Poole. Like, Poole's gotten off to a good start, but we've seen him be a bit erratic in the past. So to have another playmaking type player is certainly good for them. We'll see if his scoring increases any with Kuzma out, but I think if anything, if you're looking for points, you're probably going to look at Corey Kispert, if anything, just because he can get you 4 or 5 3-pointers and well into double figures. So I think he'd be the one if you're looking for points, but anything else, I would go with Coulibaly.
Yeah, agreed. And on the Hawks side, Bogdanovic is going to be missing 4 weeks. He had surgery on his hamstring, which is just awful. And then you find out Dyson Daniels is going to be missing multiple games with an injury. And then Vic Krejci is going to be missing more games. Onyeka Okongwu missed the last game for the Hawks. So, like, I mean, outside of Trae Young and, you know, Clint Capella and Jalen Johnson, who the heck is playing for this Hawks team? So, Noah, you're the resident Hawks expert here. Is there anything that fantasy managers can benefit from with all the rash of injuries going on in Atlanta?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple ways that they can, because I mean, we can also add in not that he's played yet this season, but Kobe Buffkin is expected to miss another 4 weeks as well. So
he's just never been healthy. Like, come on, Kobe, just pull it together. And then DeAndre Hunter is also kind of missed some time recently. I think he's questionable tonight right now. But Okongwu's not on the injury report, so that's a good thing. But if he continues to miss back-to-backs, Larry Nance was very good off the bench, and Quinn Snyder doesn't seem to say, oh, Okongwu was out, let me play Capella 30 minutes. He stuck him right at 25, so Nance will get minutes when Okongwu wasn't playing, which is, you know, nice to see. If you need threes, sure, Garrison Matthews is there. DeAndre Hunter has been pretty solid when he plays, but another guy I think it's just going to come down to the rookie, Zachary Risachet. He's going to get a lot of opportunities to play. He's already started the last couple with DeAndre Hunter out, but now even if Hunter's back and he comes off the bench, he's going to see a ton of minutes because there's nobody else to play them. And he may even start if Dyson's out and they just have this massive starting lineup and Trae Young. So there's going to be some issues, but I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities. So it's nobody is going to step up and be this elite streaming option, but there's a couple sneaky plays there. Yeah. Is there anyone that you're picking up in particular, Raph?
I would say Risachet if he's available. You're going to take a hit in the efficiency department, but I think he would be the one. I think David Roddy may be worth consideration too. He's another wing who may see more minutes moving forward. Atlanta has a Sunday, Monday back-to-back. Everyone plays on Monday, obviously, but that could be another opportunity for Larry Nance Jr. in terms of streaming. You know, streaming on a 30-team night isn't great, but he may be someone, 22, 24 minutes in that Monday night game where he'll have decent value in fantasy if Okongwu continues to miss, one half of back-to-backs.
Yeah. We touched on the Warriors comeback win a little bit. Obviously, that came at the detriment of the Pelicans, who blew another lead. Brandon Ingram's looked great thus far through the first week of the season. So has CJ McCollum, a guy that's top 15 player on a per game basis right now in category leagues. But with Herb Jones going out with this right shoulder injury, or Raph, are you seeing anyone that potentially could benefit from this? I mean, Trey Murphy's obviously still out. Is there anyone else that you're looking at on the waiver wire that you could potentially get some streaming appeal out of?
He doesn't play the same position, but what about Yves Missi, the rookie big? Because now you're without your clearly best defender, especially on the perimeter. I think that's going to lead to more straight line drives to the basket, and they're going to need a rim protector back there.
I know Daniel Tice.
Yeah, Daniel Tice has been the starter, but you think about it, he's averaging 18.7 minutes. Yves Missi is at 21.8, despite coming off the bench. So I don't know if Missi's minutes will jump too much just because they have other options. They have Tice, they have Zion. They can play at the center in smaller lineups on occasion, but I think his shot blocking ability is going to be something that is of greater importance with Herb Jones sidelined.
Yeah, I think you said it great, man. I think Missi is one of the top pickups you can make in fantasy right now. He's only 20% rostered, but he's had 2 blocks in every game that he's played. I think that there's actually, if he can get up to like 25 minutes, which he hasn't yet, he could get a double-double. And I've been pleasantly surprised by his playmaking. He's gotten, at least 2 assists in 3 of his last 4 games. And there also is some steal potential here. So this guy shouldn't be on waiver wires at all at this point. I think he's probably, it's not a stretch to say he's rookie of the year right now. Like he's playing. I think he's been the best rookie.
I mean,
has he not?
You only played 4 games, but yeah, I think he's definitely in that conversation if you want to have it this early.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks better than any other person that's rostered right now from a fantasy perspective, at least. What are your thoughts, Noah, on Yves Missi?
I liked him. I definitely, when we talked about, or when we have the rookie section later, definitely had him on my list to talk about. So I'll actually probably delay that. I want to talk about another guy in New Orleans that I think could benefit with Herb Jones going out, and that's Jordan Hawkins, who's already had a pretty good start to the year, except in this last game, he was pretty bad. But before that, scoring in double figures, grabbing pretty good rebounds, knocking down threes. I think he's a guy that clearly benefits from Herb Jones being sidelined and could move into the starting lineup until either Herb Jones or Trey Murphy returns. That's a lot of 3-pointers that he's going to get off of Zion, Brandon Ingram, and CJ McCollum creating shots for him.
Is there a point where we're going to start discussing whether Willie Green's job's in jeopardy? Do you think? Is it too early for that too? Because
I think, you can't.
Yeah.
The collapse they had last night, like you don't want to put it all in one game, but they made one significant change during the offseason. That was DeJounte Murray, obviously. Unless you can get high value for Brandon Ingram, I don't think there's another significant change that they'd probably be willing to make other than the head coach. So, yeah,
it's early. It's only a week in. It's early. I'm just saying. I
don't like talking about other people's jobs like this when we're just talking about winning and losing games, but you can't really ignore it,
No. This isn't a this year problem. This goes back over the course of 4 years that Willie Green has been there. So let's touch on some rookies here, Noah, because as I stated at the top, this has been a pretty slow starting year for all of the rookies involved here. Zach Edey's started, but it hasn't really played well. Yves Missi looks great. who are your top 5 rookies, I guess, in terms of redraft leagues that you're actually, let's go top 3, that you actually think could sustain some value here?
Top
But
five.
yeah, we can't go that deep in this.
Is there
pass.
5 rookies right now that sustain redraft value? Yeah, so Misi obviously is, blocking shots, making shots at the rim, classic big man stat stuff that I think as he continues to play well and they continue to drop like flies in New Orleans, I think that's just more minutes for him, more opportunities. And he is playing very well. So I think, minutes go up, stats go up, great for fantasy. I know you were joking about like, early rookie of the year kind of thing, but I mean, there hasn't really been much competition. I think I mentioned Jonathan Mogbo from Toronto. I think he's, shown some flashes here and there, and I'm expecting him to kind of take advantage of the Scottie Barnes injury and be able to showcase a little bit more. The other guy that I want to look at or highlight, I guess, that hasn't been great for fantasy yet, but I think is kind of proving his worth on the team and could start to be more of an impactful player in fantasy is Ryan Dunn in Phoenix, who's one of my favorite guys coming into the draft. Was very surprised he fell to the Suns at 28. But I think the main concern was, can this guy hit shots, or is he only going to be a good defensive player? And so far, he has hit more threes than he's gotten steals and blocks. He does 3 steals and blocks through 4 games and has 2 games where he's hit at least 3 threes. So the more minutes he sees, the more defensive stats he'll get. And if he continues to shoot this well, like, man, this guy's going to be special. And if he continues to get more minutes with the Suns, he's going to be very good in fantasy very quickly.
Yeah, I think he's been getting a lot of regard since his hot preseason. Everyone was like, oh, is this 3-point shooting something that's going to be able to stick? And so far it has. I think he's going to be a mainstay in Budenholzer's rotation, because one person that's really been falling, we didn't talk about other teams too much, but Yusuf Nurkic, his minutes are all over the place right now. And I think that this small ball lineup that Budenholzer's been putting out there could offer up an opportunity for Ryan Dunn to continue to get minutes. So this is something you definitely have to monitor. And I think he could be a name that kind of props up, as the season progresses. If the Suns continue to play this well, he could probably be in that conversation for all rookie team, if not rookie of the year, depending on, the opportunity space that he can get. What are your thoughts, Raph, on Noah's top 3?
I think those are good picks, especially Dunn. Talked about him on the Q&A yesterday. When Phoenix made the changes during the offseason, adding Tyus Jones and Monte Morris, there wasn't as much need for Nurkic's playmaking ability. So it doesn't have the ball in his hands as much as he did last year. And it seems to have had a detrimental effect on his production overall thus far. So, like you mentioned, they can go small. Kevin Durant, I know he doesn't like to say he's 7 feet, but he looks 7 feet, and you add that wingspan, you cover a lot of ground with him. And Dunn is a really good defender on the wing. They aren't going to be giving up too many straight line drives if you have Dunn out there on the floor. So I can definitely envision a scenario where the Suns go small for stretches and Dunn gets more minutes. Also, Royce O'Neal, he's not a rookie, obviously, but he's someone else who could potentially benefit in smaller lineups. So Dunn for sure. I think I like all 3 of those picks. I think Alex Sarr, the efficiency hasn't been great, but with Kuzma down, there's an opportunity for him to get more opportunities offensively. You just hope you don't get a 3 for 17 night from the field if that happens. So I think he's someone else to keep an eye on the remainder of week 2 and into week 3.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Man, we were talking about, you mentioned Royce O'Neal, and it got me thinking of another really good role player. In the midst of that Paolo Banchero 50-point explosion, I couldn't help but notice how everyone was just so hyped around Anthony Black.
Yes.
Yeah. And what the growth that he's shown this offseason. And I guess at what point are you guys going to start looking at him as a viable redraft league candidate? Because I think that there's going to be places where he's going to make an impact. And I don't know, Cole Anthony is definitely not it. I think that Anthony Black is probably going to more so. He might even have an opportunity to push for starting point guard at some point, right? Jalen Suggs can play a hybrid of roles here. So I don't know. It just seems like there's just a lot of momentum behind the scenes around Anthony Black, and it's showing also on the court. But want to get your guys' thoughts on that.
I mean, I think I liked him as a talent coming into the draft. I think it's interesting though, looking at what he's done so far this season. He's done a lot of things well, but the main thing that was going to make him impactful in fantasy is something that he hasn't done a ton of, and that's get steals. He had 2 steals in their last game, but didn't have one in their first 3. So I think once he, starts doing that more consistently and then chips in a little bit everywhere else like he kind of has been, he's going to be very popular to pick up off the waiver wire. But he still looked really good. I think you can stream him in here and there, but I think, I'd like to see him get more steals consistently because I know he's more than capable.
Yeah, I think in standard leagues, he's a watch list guy right now. Deeper leagues, you can certainly look to make that reach. He's playing about 27 minutes per game. To your point, Dan, Cole Anthony's at 14. So I kind of feel like he's already jumped Cole in that rotation. I don't know about KCP just because he fills a void that team really needed to address this offseason. Right. But there could be nights where, they look to taper down KCP's minutes a little bit just to make sure he's fresh for the stretch run in the postseason, where Anthony Black gets more minutes playing alongside Jalen Suggs. And I was never a guard, but I can imagine how much of a headache that would be to play against both of those guys, given how they get after you defensively. Hit a huge 3 last night that gave them the lead for good, if I'm not mistaken. Corner 3. So he's certainly getting more confident, and his teammates, as you guys all mentioned, they're showing more confidence in him as well.
That's right. I'm going to do a quick little buy and sell real quick. Russell Westbrook came alive and actually played well versus Brooklyn on Tuesday night. Do you think that this is the start of a turnaround, Noah, or is this just a blip on the radar that's probably going to fade pretty quickly?
No, it's a blip. It's, it was fun to see him play well. He scored a lot of points in a high-scoring game, made all 10 of his free throws, and I guarantee that's not going to happen again this season. I think it was fun to see him play well. It's good to see him play well. I don't ever want to see a player play bad, but I don't trust that this is like, oh, he's finally here. This is the Russell Westbrook that they brought in to, make them a contender again or help them win a championship again. I don't trust it enough, but it was fun. It was good to see.
Raph, no. Just taking the head now.
I love Russ because he's not going to cheat the game when he's out there. The issue is that the efficiency it's gone downhill in recent years. It was awesome to see him, like Noah said, 10 for 10 from the foul line, but that's not going to happen consistently. So that bench is terrible. I think that would be the one reason why you would consider holding with Russ, but I think he's still a sell for me.
Yeah, I don't even know how. I mean, he's rostered in 23% of leagues, so I don't think many people are buying. Yeah. However, I still feel like there's a place for him in points leagues. I think that that it always hides his efficiency. Yeah, he's going to play 20 minutes. He still has enough. He put up 32 last night. Before that, he put up a 24, 25 in there. There's going to be places for Russ in points leagues. Category leagues, stay the hell away. It's not worth it. Staying the hell away, man. Anthony Richardson, this dude needed to take time off. Man was tired. I know man is tired. He was tired, and I think Shane Steichen is tired of him. So Sunday Night Football heads to the Great Northern this week when Justin Jefferson and the Vikings host Joe Flacco and the Colts. NBC and Peacock will lead you up to kickoff with coverage starting at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Yeah, I got Joe Flacco in a couple of dynasty leagues. Got him for free, man, 3 years ago, and just held the hell on, not knowing that this man was going to become fantasy relevant.
Well, how did that come to pass?
Bro, why did you hold? It's a super flex, and sometimes it's hard to find those quarterbacks. So I'm just stashing bench backups, just hoping that someone's
50 deep rosters.
He was completely out of the league, though.
Bro, I still have Tom Brady somewhere thinking, hey, man, maybe he doesn't want to be an owner. You know what I'm saying? He's gonna put the cleats back on and come back out there. Yeah, it's a cold world in super flex dynasty leagues. But I want to do another quick little buy and sell just to kind of get a sense of 3 guards that have been playing outstanding here that were extremely great value in fantasy. want to start off first with Jordan Poole, who's a top 12 player right now in fantasy. Largely, he's just a 3 and scores guy and scoring guy. But, we did see this nice little uptick in assists. Is this something that you guys are buying into? Obviously not the first round value. That's not going to hold for the rest of the season. But I mean, I guess by nature of that, he's a sell high. But is there any chance that you would hold Jordan Poole just based knowing like his history, his shot profile, the state of the team? Is this someone that you want to have on your rosters? Start with you, Noah.
I think I would try and sell high. I don't think I would be like mad if I had to hold. I mean, so right now, Basketball Monster has him as a number 5 player in 9-cat leagues. Like, no, that's not going to hold. If we look at how that's happening, he's averaging 5 threes per game, shooting 51% from the field, and getting 3 steals per game, and shooting. Did you see this? 61% from 3. It's phenomenal. It's been great. It's not going to stay quite this good. Now, if you're able to trick somebody into paying a top 10, top 15, top 25 player.
Hey, come get Tyrese Halliburton for Jordan Poole.
Guys, look at the numbers. We're talking about a top 5 player for a guy. I don't even know what Halliburton's right now, but you win this trade easy. But if you're able to swing something like that, sure. But with where Poole is drafted, I want to say it was the 80s was kind of where his ADP was. And he ends up being this top 50 player. Like, that's great value from where you drafted him. So if you're able to sell high and get this elite guy, then yes, go for it, because this is not going to stay. But I really think he's just going to be pretty good for the rest of the year.
Yeah. And where do you stand on Jordan Poole? Is this a sell high for you, Raph, or?
Oh yeah, it's like the end of trading places, man. I'm going crazy trying to sell high. We could try to sell right now because, this isn't going to hold. Like, you kind of hope he settles into that like top 75 range. But then you're also worried about what happens later in the season, because obviously they're going to want to have Bub Carrington out there. He's already playing good minutes now, but I kind of wonder if there's going to be a point later in the season where they kind of just toss him the keys and say, show us what you have and show us what you could potentially be in the future. That probably move Poole off the ball, obviously. And for these teams that wind up going in the tank, it doesn't take too much for them to sit a guy down completely. So I think now would be a really good time to entertain selling high if you have him rostered.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think I probably lean towards Noah just in terms of like, hey, you drafted him as a, 7th, 8th round guy. I mean, you're getting extremely good value right now. So I think as to Raph's point, he's probably going to settle in somewhere in that top 70 range, but like, I'll just be riding high right now. And I think he's looks like he's turned the corner, man. His confidence is crazy right now. And it's crazy what confidence can do for a shooter of his magnitude. In the same light, Cam Thomas is a top 12 player as well. I have, obviously he was on my breakout watch list. I've been talking and hyping him up probably more than any other person on freaking X. I'm holding Cam Thomas just because I feel like there's still untapped potential here. The less Ben Simmons plays, the better. His the on-off numbers with Ben Simmons and him on the court are terrible. With him and Schroeder, it's really good. And I think Jordi Fernandez realizes this. I think we'll start to see some more playmaking coming about here for Cam Thomas. So I'm still holding. I don't think he's going to be a first-round value all season, but similarly, he went in the 6th round, 5th, 6th round in most drafts. I think he can probably perform right up to that level, which is where you got him. I don't think he's going to be much worse than that value, but what say you, Raph?
I'd agree with that. In addition to what he's doing offensively in terms of the scoring and the 3-pointers, he's averaging 1.3 steals per game. That's not really an area where he's excelled in the past. You do have some concern about the field goal percentage down the line. He's at 44.8 right now. When you're like a lead nail-on all-star, anything that feels like leather, you're throwing it up. You can have issues in that category, but I think he's going to have the volume to make up for that in terms of the points per game. If he can get the assists up with more opportunities to make plays for others, that would be really helpful. But I'm holding with Cam Thomas right now.
Yeah, that free throw rate is crazy too. No, another guy that's on an extreme hot streak, and it's probably why we ranked him where we did, because we didn't know how he's going to show up in the first half of the season, because he's usually a late season guy. Jalen Green, averaging 28 points per game right now, just unconscious. Also looks locked in. Is this somebody that you're selling high? believe he's a top 30 player right now?
I don't think he's a top 30 or top 40 player, no matter how you look at it. But I don't know about selling high per se, because I do think that this is something that he can maybe not fully maintain, this 29 points and 5 threes a game rate. But he's shooting 43% from the floor, which is pretty much just
Jalen
slightly
Green.
better than, I mean, it's like 42 last year, 42 the year. Like this is who he is. The free throws percentage is a little bit better. He's hitting, threes at a higher percentage at 41%. So that was a nice improvement. But the main thing is he's playing more minutes and shooting the ball more. He's at 22 shot attempts per game. So as long as he's shooting the ball and they're going in at the rate that they have been, which isn't great, but he's still been a top 40 guy while shooting 43%. So it's not like, he's going to stop making shots and it's going to tank his value. Like he's already not shooting a great rate and he's still been pretty good. So, and they don't seem to have any issues with him shooting if he's hitting him the way he is. So I think he doesn't do much outside of points and threes in category leagues, but obviously in points leagues, that's totally fine. So yeah, I mean, you can sell high, sure, but I don't think that this is like numbers that he can't maintain, at least something close to that over the course of the rest of the season.
Yeah, what do you think about it, Raph?
Yeah, I feel like the scoring will eventually come down, but not to the point where it becomes a sunk cost. I think he's someone I would hold personally. You think about it, your backcourt partners, Fred VanVleet, as good as he is in terms of overall fantasy value, especially in category leagues, he's a 34% shooter right now. And he's normally below 40% from the field overall. So I think that also kind of helps Jalen Green in terms of his opportunities to get the ball in his hands and make some things happen from a scoring standpoint. So he's a hold for me right now.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at his ADP, he was going in the 9th, 10th rounds of most drafts that weren't, in the category leagues. Points leagues, he probably went a little bit earlier than that. But I think this is another guy that I think his floor is pretty high. And if you see, like to your point, Raph and Noah, about his shot volume, Ime Udoka is totally comfortable with him taking 20 shots a game. And especially the way Fred VanVleet's shooting, guy can't hit a freaking basket. They're going to need a primary scorer. And it looks like it's him right now. Even though you're playing through Şengün, he's a playmaker. He'll have his moments to have his 20-point, 30-point games too. But they need someone to put the ball in the basket. That's Jalen Green. So, yeah, I mean, I think I'm holding all three of these guys. I think they're tremendous value for where they're getting it, where you got them. And I think they're just showing out right now. But I do also see the argument for selling high just based on how high they are right now. All right, let's get to the schedule things you need to know. One player that we haven't talked about yet is Payton Pritchard, and I think he needs to be rostered in all leagues. He's still under 30% rostered for some reason. The Boston Celtics play 3 games this week, but I think it's more about, I think this guy is just a hold in general. He's like a 6-man. He's cashing the threes. He's just been phenomenal efficiency-wise and just being that spark off the bench for the Celtics. And this is a well-oiled machine, man. I just don't see where they're one of 3 teams that are undefeated right now. I think you just have to lock in. There's certain teams that are just very good for fantasy, and the Boston Celtics is one of them. So if he's out there, go get him. Want to get, Noah, your thoughts on some pickups that we haven't discussed yet that you think might be good for not only this week, but also going forward.
Yeah, I got a couple guys I had to double check to make sure this one was still under 50%, and he is for some reason. Christian Braun, who's been phenomenal for Denver. He's 40% roster when I checked on Yahoo, which is crazy. He's a top 60 guy. He's the starting shooting guard, playing a ton of minutes, providing value across the board. I think he's been much more than just like he's getting an opportunity and he's producing because of it. Like he's been very, very good. So I like picking him up. One guy I got 2 more real quick. When we talked about the Jazz earlier, one guy that started the second half in place of Lauri Markkanen and should continue to play extra minutes with Taylor Hendricks done for the year is Kyle Filipowski, the rookie. Maybe I do have his exact numbers pulled up, but he was pretty good, mostly playing in that second half. Finished with 12 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, 2 threes. Like that stuff will play really well. And the fact that it was him, not John Collins, that started over Markkanen, that bodes well.
Yeah.
And then the last guy is Lindy Waters, who we could have talked about earlier with Golden State. It's a deep cut.
That man was cooking. I had to look at my Dynasty 30 to see if is this guy available?
Was he
deep in there? No, he was not.
Typical. But he had Steve Kerr had the quote 2 days ago saying, yeah, this guy's been great all training camp. I'd feel comfortable starting him. And then he plays him a ton of minutes, plays him more than Moses Moody, and he plays really well. So if maybe more of a deeper league guy, but yeah, Lindy Waters, that's your deep cut for the day.
I like it. Who do you got, Raph? Who's left?
I think one for me, Boston has a back-to-back coming up here Friday and Saturday, which means Al Horford sit one. So Luke Kornet, 1% rostered right now. I think he's someone to consider. Noah mentioned Payton Pritchard earlier. He's pretty much, I think Dan mentioned him first, actually, but he's someone that you're going to have rostered at this point. And I'm starting to wonder if teams should give the foul towards the end of quarters, even if they're in the penalty, because you think
about
about
it, man, pull it.
Yeah, because
Devin Hester,
exactly
right. Yeah.
It's like the momentum lost when he gets up one of those shots and it goes in. Milwaukee was practically toast when he made that shot at the end of the third quarter on Monday night. So it's kind of a joke. Yeah, it's kind of a joke, but it kind of isn't. What this man is going to do in the quarters. It's like Jamal Crawford when he used to take all those grenades back in the day. Why are you letting him even shoot the ball? So I think that's something to think about a little bit if you want to have some fun with all this. But I think Luke Kornet would be one. We talked about the Hawks earlier in terms of their schedule and their many injuries. They've got 3 games the remainder of this week, and that includes a Sunday, Monday back-to-back. So Larry Nance Jr. For that back-to-back over the weekend is another guy I'd strongly consider picking up at this point.
Yeah, I like that. I guess to summarize mine, I think the top 3 guys I had on my list were Yves Macy. He's still under 30% rostered. Bilal Coulibaly, he's under 30%. And then Payton Pritchard, who's also under 30%. I don't know. There's a lot of really good players on waivers right now. So, make sure you guys are prioritizing the right guys. And if some of those old heads fall off. Oh, speaking of old head falling off, what are we doing with Draymond Green, man? Is he a drop? Because, I got him in a couple spots, and I'm just looking at this. I'm like, bro, he is just not it right now. You know what I mean? This is just the Steve Kerr rotations of everybody's going to play 20 minutes, and, this is what it is.
There's that, and then you look at the resume, what happens when Stephen Curry isn't on the floor.
Facts.
I don't think he's going to do anything silly. I wouldn't put it past him.
Steve's like, all right, you played enough today. Let's give you 20 minutes. We don't need to see anything more.
No, I'm talking about getting thrown out.
I know.
Hopefully steps out 2 games. Let me see what can I do to get him exactly a 2-game suspension.
Hopefully they're not playing the Suns. As long as they keep him away from Nurkic and Gobert.
Yeah. Then we're good. They've got Houston on Saturday after this second game of back-to-back.
Oh, Dylan Brooks, you never know.
Ooh.
So and then you've got
Washington on Monday. Jordan Poole.
God, man. See, I'm glad you brought him up because now we're talking about potential behavioral issues, and it seems like there are quite a few coming up. So, the start to the season hasn't been good for Draymond, that's for sure.
Yeah, it has not. And just to close the show out, I just want to get your guys' thoughts on. I don't know if you heard Joe Mazzulla on some podcast talking about changes that the NBA needs to make. He floated the idea of having penalty minutes, and then also, why is basketball the only sport where you're not allowed to fight? And I just want to think about it. Was he not around when the Malice in the Palace happened? Was that? I'm pretty sure that was the reason why we had NBA players stop scrapping and the double text, being flagrants and all that. And I don't know. It sounds very problematic. I appreciate the ingenuity and the innovation ideas of let's put this guy in a penalty box for 3 seconds and have him come in. I appreciate the ideas, but what are we talking about, Mazzulla? Come on, bro. This can't be hockey. This can't be soccer. We can't be doing that. Can't be doing it.
I think he's one of the most exciting interviews in sports. I think it's more so than the fighting quote, because I thought haha, that one's kind of funny. Some of the other quotes this guy drops, I don't know. I kind of told one of my friends, I was like, I kind of want to start speaking like Joe Mazzulla because it's so freaking cool.
Dude, he's on another. The way he talks, he's on another planet sometimes, but so thoughtful about a lot of things. Of just taking life is way more important than the basketball questions that you're asking me.
Yes.
But it was good to see the lighthearted side of him because obviously he doesn't believe this, but it was funny that he actually put it out there.
All right. I think
I don't know. If
he could get in on it, I think he would do it.
Yeah. It's just the way his delivery. It's such like a deadpan kind of style delivery.
Right. That's why I feel like he's got to be joking to some degree in this, but maybe not.
I don't think that man's playing around. I would not be in favor of having fighting to that level in the NBA. Like, we've seen it all. The discourse surrounding like basic shoving matches in NBA games gets out of hand. Like, I could just imagine how some of these networks would talk about the players if they're actively fighting. I don't want to hear with that. And I don't want to hear that. I don't want to deal with it. And the other part, most of these guys aren't actually trying to fight, man. No. You seen those game checks? Like, even if you made it legal, like, come on, man. I'm not going to risk like a broken orbital bone or jaw. And you'd get paid under those circumstances, but I wouldn't want to risk that.
Right.
Yeah,
it's just crazy. But this is the NBA, man. All the narratives, the headlines, and all that. We'll mix in some fantasy basketball talk in the mix too. But that will do it for the Rotoworld Basketball Show. For Noah Rubin, Dan Titus, and Raphielle Johnson. We'll see you next time.